What are the pros and cons of living in Northport, Florida?
In this video, we're gonna go over 8 pros, 4 cons, and all of them are pretty important to understand. We're starting right now.
If you're looking to move to the area, make sure to call, text, or email me. My information will be in the description box below. I hear from people every day and I love it.
So the first pro, and I think this is a big one because where you're gonna live is gonna be really important, not just from like the location, but the actual house, right? That's where you're gonna spend most of your time. And in Northport, compared to especially a lot of like this area of Southwest Florida, but Florida as a whole, I would say, you're generally going to get a newer home. Sometimes you can get a brand new home. A lot of the homes are gonna be, 10 years. You got some that are gonna be 20, 30 years old, but as a whole, I'd say it's gonna be rare to find anything much older than that.
Yes, you can get a much better home for your money in Northport. I mean, we do still have older homes in Northport, but you can find those newer homes, newer construction homes for a lot less than you would in pretty much anywhere else in the Southwest Florida area.
Yeah, Venice, Port Charlotte, Inglewood, and yeah.
Well, Port Charlotte you could.
Yeah, Port Charlotte to some degree too. And the thing about Northport is that opportunity I think is gonna be there for quite some time too, because there is so much land available that's being built on, or you could decide to build on, or whatever the case may be. And with having a newer home, hopefully generally leads to less issues. There's going to be situations where there's going to be a new construction home or a newer home that maybe builder wasn't the best and they didn't do everything, but I'd say that's a little less common. You get a little more of that peace of mind versus a home that's 30, 40, 50 years old and someone's rigged things up in the house certain ways that maybe aren't up to code, or just things are falling apart from age. It's just nice to have a little bit more of that peace of mind, and you can get it in Northport pretty consistently.
Another pro is that you also get a bigger home for your money. So not only you get a newer home, you also get a bigger home, which if you're moving down with a family and you want a bigger home, so Northport would be a great option for you.
Yeah, it's just nice to have the extra space, whether you want it or not. It's kind of nice to have it. And some people, it's I need this space.
Yes.
I've got 3 kids. We need at least 3 bedrooms, maybe 4, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Or if you're working from home, you also need, that dedicated bedroom as your office. And if on top of that you have like 3 kids, so now you do need a bigger space.
And actually, just the availability, just like we talked about in Northport, there's more newer homes. When we first started looking to move to Venice, it was like hard to find anything. We kind of wanted like a 3 and a den or a 4, and there's just not much out in Venice.
Yes.
There's a few, and even then I would say 3 bedrooms, there's a little bit harder to find. There's a lot of 2 bedrooms, some 1s, things like that. Northport, finding a 3 bedroom, no big deal. Finding a 4 bedroom, no big deal. There's some 5 bedrooms. There's a lot more opportunity to get that extra space if you need it.
Yes, and the rooms are just so much bigger too.
Yeah.
3 bedrooms, but they are good space bedrooms.
Pro number 3 is that in Northport, generally compared to a lot of the areas, I would say you're going to get a little bit more yard. It just really depends on the house. I'd say they're pretty standard for the most part, but there are going to be some where maybe they bought an extra lot next to it or behind it, and then you can get like this big yard. And I have seen ones where it's really nice because they will buy that extra lot or 2, and it's almost like you got to park to the side of your house the way they'll do it they'll leave a couple trees up and things like that. It looks really nice. Obviously good to have that space, especially if you've got a family.
Or if you want to add on a pool, because they didn't add on a pool, then you have a lot of space to do that.
That's a big pro right there, because a lot of people want the pool in Florida.
Also, if you have like a camper or an RV that you want to park, you do have the space to park, and you can park your RVs in those slots.
Yeah, and that's one thing too that I guess it's kind of almost a separate pro in a way, because a lot of communities or certain cities you aren't even allowed to do that, whereas a lot more of Northport you can do that. So with that yard space, you can make use of it how you see fit. So that's a nice pro as well. And a couple other things that I know some people in Northport will do is like put up like fruit trees and things like that with the yard. So there's just a lot that you could do with having that extra space.
Another pro to Northport is that it's a great spot for families, and it also has great schools.
Yep. Really important factors are the schools good? Everyone wants to know, are the schools good? I would say as a whole, most of this Southwest Florida area that we're in, Inglewood, Northport, Venice, all that, typically most of the schools are going to be pretty good, but Northport fits right in line with that, so that's something good to know.
They have like art fest and different like festival type things like that during the weekend.
Yeah, always something cool to obviously bring the family out there, get outside, get moving, check out whatever's new and happening for that event, and always good to know that you can kind of have something to do. They also do have other little activities and stuff that the city organizes that are geared for families and kids and things like that. So that's good to know too.
On that note, another pro is that Northport has the warm mineral springs, which we haven't checked out yet, but we do have to get there.
Yeah, we've driven past it. Yeah, they've got a fair amount of stuff to do, I'd say was the pro as a whole. And then they've also got a couple different water parks. And I know they have like a sort of like a splash pad type thing where the water comes up, like shoots up out of the ground that kids can go play in. So there are a few different things like that kids can do, again, with the arts and craft fairs and things like that. I'd say the city as a whole doesn't have a lot of like what Venice has. You don't have the beaches right there. You don't have like the fishing pier and things like that and all the stuff that comes with that, or like your typical downtown. But they've got these other little events that they have in the area, and then they've got some of those things that they did put in, like the water parks and just a fair amount of regular parks as well. Next pro is that there's a lot of shopping in Northport, actually. Go ahead and you could take this one because you know a little bit about some of the stores more than I do.
There is a lot of different department stores, and they're all pretty close together. It's not like a mall, but they're like little shopping centers or shopping plazas, and they are actually right off of 41, so it's really easy to get to them.
Yeah.
Not very walkable. When they're in a plaza, it is a little more walkable, but if you want to drive to a different store and maybe it's not in that same shopping center, you do have to drive.
There's actually a ton, I think, just in that Tamiami Trail area, 41, on both sides of the road. And then even in some of them, if you go like the next block back, there's like a little street behind. And then there's that other area that's got like the, I'm trying to think what's all over there. There's a McDonald's and a couple other little shops, and restaurants too, but little shopping strip mall centers. But just that Tamiami Trail as a whole, like all through the whole city. And it's never really that far from anywhere that you would live to try to get there. So that's nice that everyone has a pretty convenient spot to go shopping. And yeah, they've got most of just about anything you could want, I would say, outside of maybe, you know, certain things that you're going to have to go to a bigger city to get to. But yeah, there's plenty of your basics covered there.
Another pro to Northport is that you are a very short drive to other bigger cities. So you have Fort Myers, about a 45-minute to an hour drive depending on traffic. You also have Sarasota, Tampa, a lot of different cities, a lot of different vibes. So whatever, you know, you're in the mood for, you can take a short drive, and maybe you don't have that specific activity in Northport, but you can take a short drive and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think Sarasota's probably about 30 to 45 minutes depending on what end you're going to and you're coming from. St. Pete maybe about an hour-ish, same with Tampa, I would say. And then also, of course, Venice and Inglewood, which are much closer. You're probably 20, 25, maybe 30-minute drive. You could probably get to the beach, which you don't have in Northport. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to live by the beach. And Northport becomes a good alternative because you can get a little bit nicer home, newer home, better for families, all the stuff we've talked about for a little bit less money. And you're still not that far, really, from the beach in Venice, if that's where you want to be, or Inglewood and Nokomis. But all those cities really are not going to be too far from trying to get to those activities. So it's nice, you know, it kind of puts you central to a lot of those locations. Oh, and actually, we didn't even think to mention this. We never do. Port Charlotte. Port Charlotte also has a ton of shopping. So if there's anything that you don't need in Northport, Port Charlotte is really, really close. Northport was north of Port Charlotte, and that's how it got its name. So.
And another cool thing about Northport is that it is very close to the WELLEN Park area. Technically, WELLEN Park is in Northport, and some of it is in Northport, some of it is in Venice, but it is very close to Northport, and they are developing like a huge land. There is a lot of stores going in that area, so you're going to be close to a lot of shopping, and there is also going to be more like a huge lake, and then they're going to build some stores around them, and then there is a lot of housing getting developed there as well.
One of the knocks, I guess you could say, on Northport is that it doesn't have like an actual downtown that's really walkable. Well, WELLEN Park is going to be that for Northport. They have like a digital computerized image, that video that you can watch of it that shows you what it's going to look like, and it looks like it's going to be amazing. Lots of shopping, lots of restaurant, super walkable, super bikeable, all that. And I think one thing that goes with all that too, you know, the WELLEN Park area as a whole, the different gated communities, if maybe that is the lifestyle you want and you want to be maybe just outside of Venice or something like that, WELLEN Park gives you a lot of those options. like she said, we get some flack sometimes in the comments because some people will be like, it's not Venice, it's realtors trying to be shady or whatever. But like some of the addresses are Venice. I understand that a lot of it is under like Northport for utilities and things like that. But if you're putting on your envelopes Venice, to me it's like,
that is where you live.
yeah, it's a little bit of both.
And a lot of the kids that if you own a house in Welland Park or Northport, but your address is Venice, your kid is going to go to school in Venice, not Northport.
Yeah.
Well, unless you want to send them to Northport because Sarasota County is a choice school, so you can send your kids whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of the parents and kids that live in that Welland Park area, and they associate themselves as living in Venice. But Northport, go ahead and claim it. You know, why not? And again, it gives you that a lot of the stuff that you maybe would want out of a bigger city or a more walkable area. You get that with the Welland Park area.
Yeah, and one thing to note too, Welland Park, it's going to be its own thing. Like it's not going to be part of Venice, it's not going to be part of Northport. Like it's clearly becoming its own thing, like its own neighborhoods, their own shopping. People in Welland Park are not going to need to go to like Northport for things. And I heard they're trying to build a school there as well.
Yeah, they are.
So it's like, it's definitely its own little district almost.
And it sits kind of in between Venice and Northport. So let's talk cons. Con number one, we have heard, and I can definitely see why to some degree. Some people say it's boring. And that's because there's not as much to do as maybe living in a beach city where you get the pier and the jetty in Venice. There are some golf courses in the area and things like that, but there's definitely not as much outside of parks, the water parks, the warm mineral springs, and then shopping. There's not as much going on.
The next con is that Northport is very rural, so it has a very country feel, and that's probably why people think it's boring.
I've seen on, I think it's niche.com, they give like ratings of cities for their crime and cost of living, all that kind of stuff. But they describe it as sparse suburban, which I think that's a pretty good accurate. It feels kind of like a neighborhood in a city, but it is a little more country and spread out.
More spread out, yes.
And I think it's, I want to say either the biggest area-wise city in Florida or maybe the country metropolitan. And it does not feel metropolitan at all because of that spread out feel. And that's kind of goes with that country feel as potentially being a con. To some it might be a pro, you know, they make like the woods and the extra space, but with it being so spread out, it can take a little bit longer to get from one end of the city to the other, not because traffic is so terrible usually, more so because just there's not a lot of condos, not a lot of people stacked on top of each other. Every house has such and such size yard or bigger, so it makes everything kind of spread out.
The next con is that Northport is a lot farther from the beach
Than some of the other cities.
But with that being said, it's not like you have to drive an hour or two to get to the closest beach. It's probably about a 20 to 25 minute drive to the closest beach.
I think for a lot of people like that live in Northport, it's because they wanted to live in Sarasota maybe, or they wanted to live in Venice or Inglewood. You know, there are some people that just like Northport, like feel a bit want to be there. But I do think a lot of people, it's like this alternative that's slightly inland. You can get a little bit more of maybe what you're looking for, like all those pros we talked about, you know, maybe feeling like you got a better deal on the cost, whatever that may be. You can get a lot of those things and be a little bit further away. So it is a con that you're not right by the beach or the things that maybe you want, but it's a way to kind of get what you want or you need and still be pretty close to all that stuff.
The next con is, and I feel like this one's a big one, there are not a lot of jobs in Northport. I mean, there are some stores, grocery stores, service-related industry.
Shopping, restaurants,
Yeah. If you're moving down for work, I would say Northport's not the place to be in. But what a lot of people do is, since Northport is so much more affordable, they'll buy a house in Northport and then they'll just drive like 30-40 minutes to the nearest city for work. So, and that's very common around here. A lot of people live in Northport and they work in Sarasota.
I've heard it described as a bedroom community, which is fitting. You know, a lot of people buy it for the bedrooms, an affordable place to live, and then you can commute to work. But yeah, there's not going to be a lot of office jobs. There's not going to be a lot of factory jobs. A lot of that kind of stuff just isn't there. If you're willing to make the drive, you can get the best of both worlds.
Or if you're willing to make a career change.
Yeah, there you go.
Or if you work from home too. Like nowadays, a lot of people are working from home, so it doesn't really matter where you live. You can live wherever you want. If you're looking to move to the Venice, Sarasota, Englewood, Northport, make sure to call, text, or email me. I am a realtor here and I can help you find a home. My information will be in the description box below.
Leave a comment, let us know any other questions you have, and we'll try to get a response to you or get to it in a future video. Hit that like button if the video was helpful, subscribe and turn on all notifications, and live breezy.